So let's start our readings with Olivia.
Hey everybody, I'm Olivia Wylie. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, and co-writer under the pen name you can see on the screen, O.E. Tierman, of the Aces High Jokers Wild series. And two bits of housekeeping. I will be reading from my screen, and you may notice this in the background. My screen's a touch screen, so if you see me poking at the screen, that's what's going on. There may be a cameo from Calico Jack the cat, who is wandering around and not thrilled about this whole I'm talking to a screen and not him thing. So without further ado, I will give you a reading from chapter 4 of the newest Aces High Jokers Wild book, Aces High Jokers Wild, Draw Dead. And I will apologize for the accents. Kurt Graves reads for us, and he does a phenomenal job on the audiobooks. However, I write for a reason. So, event file 4, file tag, personnel evaluation, timestamp, 1100 hours, 4/3/21:59. Seriously? You seriously got somebody? Janice asked, grinning. Well, fucking finally. Across his desk, the boy gave Janice one of his little wasn't anything smiles. He's an officer who earned a full genomic license, Aiden agreed. Apparently, he's figured out some tricks already on the R&R base up north. He's willing to hand the project up there over to somebody looking to retire from active duty and come down here to take a look at our setup. I looked over his personality profile. Looks like he'll fit okay, but we'll see. I've got him coming down for an observational week to let him decide if he wants to transfer. Janice let herself smile for a second. Like you were sure to get ripped off if you didn't question everything, especially gifts. She schooled her expression, crossing her arms. He's an officer with a fancy license. That's real nice. But he better as hell be trained for mobile base work, or he's less use than a chocolate dildo to me. I ain't doing training right now, Aiden. I ain't got time. Aiden held up his hands in defense, that cute, I'm doing my best smile on his face. I know that, Janice. I looked into his record. He's got some mobile base experience, and he's got a solid service record. It looks good. I wouldn't bring him on if I didn't think he could help. Janice nodded. She hadn't expected any less from the boy, but keeping him on his toes was never a bad thing. All right. I'm giving him a try, see if he's any good. Get him over here. I'll give him a test run for you. Aiden's little smile widened. Good. He should be here this afternoon, tomorrow at the latest. Good to hear, Janice replied with a nod. Can I get back to my job now? After you eat something, Aiden replied, and this time his smile was a crooked little boy teasing one. I don't want you passing out in your office because you forgot lunch. Again. Fucking panty-waist nanny, Janice grumbled. The damn boy just kept on smiling. Times like this, she wasn't sure whether she wanted to ruffle the kid's hair or smack him upside the head, command position or no. Aiden shrugged. Hey, it's in my job description. Janice rolled her eyes. Yeah, I'm going. She ate standing up, waving away invitations to take a seat. There was so much to do these days. One task at a time, she'd been working through the checklist on her tab all day, and she was still just a third of the way done. Lunch down, she got back at it. The to-do list was a fucking hydra. You got one thing done, and 4 other things broke or set an alert. You never really got caught up on a system like this. You just kept it in line. She was halfway through the day and halfway into a membrane sieve unit when the sliding of the maintenance room door announced someone's entry. Dilly, she started, and caught herself with a curse as she remembered the kid was getting sick of the childish nickname. She started again, her voice echoing in the body of the sieve unit. Delakeisha, if that's you, this time I'll kick your sassy little ass around this compound. When that door's closed, you don't open it. You know that, girl. I know you do. she muttered without pulling her head out of the unit's guts. Then I'm gonna say it's a good thing my name isn't Dilakisha, or Dilly, a rough voice replied. Janice jerked so hard at the sound of a stranger's voice that she almost cracked her skull on the tension gauge. Carefully, she pulled herself out of the machine, wiped her face, and squinted at the intruder. He was a big guy, all solid muscle, under skin the color of the darkest loam. Short hair was tied in a ponytail, framing an easy smiling face. He hefted a rucksack over his shoulder, giving her a little nod. Milo Dukas, Commander, reporting for short-term observational tour before I sign on with your unit. They said I should report to you. Janice gave him the once-over, nice and slow, reading how he took it. This was her favorite first test for new hands. This one didn't bristle under her eyes, and he didn't draw back. He just stood quiet as she looked him over, and Janice put one mark down in his favor in her private scorecard. Good. He could take a little questioning, and he could handle silence. Those were signs to start off on the right foot. She didn't mind the chance for looking either. Good looks on this guy. A wide, flared nose, good math to the planes of his face. Taller than her, she didn't see that all that much. He had to be 6'3". He wouldn't be bad to look at on the regular if he didn't wreck the impression when he opened his mouth. In her experience, plenty of guys did that. Who said I was the one to report to? She asked. Milo shrugged. Couple of specialist ladies. Blonde and black-haired? Janice asked. The man gave her a nod. She rolled her eyes. Still fucking teenagers, I swear. You got pranked, friend. I'm the hydroelectric specialist, not the commander. Janice, she added, putting her hand out to shake. Only when he'd raised his free hand did she realize how much grit was stuck to her fingers. She started to pull her hand back, but he caught it in a firm grip. Gonna get dirty, Janice observed. Your hands, I mean. I've been in the machinery. Milo shrugged as he let go, smiling easy and slow. I spent most days with my hands in soil. Doesn't bother me. She heard American Agco in his voice as he spoke. Not the mile thick CPS twang she had, more of a foreman's son drawl. But American Agco was there in his words all the same. So, an Agco man. Well, that'd be interesting. She had to hope he'd dropped the American Agco take on morality, at least the shitty bits. But you never knew. They beat that shit in deep. On the other hand, she wasn't going to assume. She'd kicked that trash to the curb, after all, and she'd started off as a field hand. You never could tell. Well, if he started trouble, she knew how to handle him. She'd known how to handle the American Agco bullshit since she was born. You folks run on first names? Milo asked. So our commander likes it, Janice agreed easily, wiping her hands on her pants. I'm Specialist Danvers in the roster. The newcomer's eyes widened. His face split in a grin. Danvers! Oh man, it's great to meet you in person. I'm D. Coss in the meshnet. Janice's eyes widened. You're D. Coss. Holy overlord fuck, man. Sure, it's good to meet you finally. Grinning, she reached down and grabbed his hand for a proper shake. The work we talked about saved my ass last year, and you were right. Adding the extra genes to the tomatoes, they took off like fucking rockets on meth. And the restrictor gene on the strawberries worked too. They produce great now. They don't sprawl all over neither. Same with the squash. Those pigs get through okay, yeah? Yeah, the big man agreed happily. I've been seeing them up close too. I'm the one who's been working with the test seed collection you set up to Grand Lake. Yeah? Janice couldn't help but smile, with him grinning at her. How's they doing up there? They're taking off like weeds, her guest enthused. The soil's nitrogen's content is climbing. We've taken a small bed to stress test part of the crop, and we're using the rest for control. So far, they're doing fine, though we're seeing some throwback traits we're gonna have to keep working on in the Solanaceae species. Janice held up a hand. Back up, stud. Say what now? With any other stranger, she would have kept quiet and looked it up later. But hell, this wasn't a stranger. She'd been talking online with this guy for a whole year. He was practically a partner on this project. Holy shit, she'd hit the jackpot. Milo cleared his throat. Sorry, went Latin on you there. The potatoes and the tomatoes, I mean. It's mainly the potatoes, the whites and the sweets. Their heat resistance still needs work. Janice snorted. Well, you're doing better than me so far if you got everything to do that, because our soil nutrients content ain't gone up a bit. Those numbers I sent you 2 weeks ago, they're even lower now. Plants are okay for now, but they're going to run out of food soon enough. What did you do different? Milo's brow wrinkled. Huh, not sure. Just normal best practices. He glanced around the room. You hooking this system up to irrigate the plants as well as the domestic water? Hoping to, Janice agreed. Trick is to get this goddamn hard water under control before it fucks the seedlings over. But I added a couple carbon filters to the right places. I can pull it off. Bigger hurdle is this base water pressure, which is about as strong as my grandpa pissing. So right now we fill up buckets outside and carry them out. Then there's this cocksucking damping off fungus I keep fighting with out in the beds. That's still happening. Damn. Milo sighed. Did you use the copper solution I was talking about? Janice shook her head. Logistics couldn't land it for me, so I dug around and took my second best option. Borrowed some sheets of flat prefab and tarps and solarized all that soil. Cooked it until I thought it was good and sterile, but what's that look for? Milo cleared his throat. You cooked the soil. Did you add the beneficial microbes back in? Janice blinked. Microbes? I thought the point was to get them out. What's with putting more in? Milo paused for a moment, looking at her like he wasn't sure how to say the next word. Then the man relaxed, giving her an easy smile that went all the way to his eyes. Nice eyes, she thought. What do you say we talk microbes after duty? Milo suggested. I still need to sign in with your commander and get squared away. But I got some docs on the whole thing we can take a look at. I want to make sure I don't miss anything going at this off the top of my head. So, you up for it when we're off the clock? Sure, Janice agreed, happy to be surprised like that. You up for a beer? I've been saying I need to get you a beer for months now. I can make good on that. Or I got rum if that suits better. Beer'll do for shop talk, Milo agreed with a nod. But some night I'll take you up on that rum. How'd you get the good stuff? Janice grinned. I got crazy good kids over in logistics. They know they get me the goods so they hear about it. Come on, I'll get you introduced, get you a room. I'll knock off around dinner and we'll talk dirt bugs. Sound like a plan? Milo put another good mark on his scorecard in Janice's head when he made a face. Only if you don't call it dirt. If we grow in it, it's soil, right? God damn, you really are an ag man, Janice laughed, tickled that the guy she had done so much work with came off so well in person too. He was teasing her even. And he wasn't full of himself, even with his credentials. That was definitely something she didn't happen every day. She waved her hand toward the door. Come on, let's get you. The door banged open. Sarah just admitted she pranked the new guy and told him to come in here, Liza exclaimed irritably, barreling into Janice's space. She let out a long sigh and straightened. Officer Ducasse, I apologize. Some people in my unit can't tell the difference between funny and stupid. Officer Carlin, personnel officer. If you'll follow me, I'll get you introduced to our commander. And there we go.
There you go. Thanks, Olivia.
Yeah.
Let's go continue reading. We can take questions at the end, or there was one in the Q&A, I think, if you wanted to look at that now. You've muted yourself. All right, Olivia, you are muted.
Do excuse me, my partner's sleeping upstairs, so I'm kind of playing around in the basement to make this work. So there's a question. I feel like you might know something about plants and gardening. So I'm a trained horticulturist, and a lot of my horticulture experience has gone into this work. But I'm playing with a climate change Colorado in 2155. So you're noticing a lot of references to high heat. It's expected that if we don't change things by then, Colorado will hit 114 on a regular basis in the summer times. So plants will really be up against the wall. I'm playing with a lot of genetic editing of seed stock. And so when I was talking about all that restrictor genes and everything, it's genes that will help the plants either handle the heat or grow in small spaces so that you can make mobile units that are planting beds that can be moved into the shade or out depending, and move with this unit because the units have to move all the time to avoid search and destroy drones. So yeah, it's a lot of fun designing that. And for folks who are curious, the romance in here is between a character who I've been waiting to write for years, Janice, who is a trans lady, and a gentleman who might just catch her eye.
All right, cool. We'll come back to the Q&A at the end if there's time, and then let's keep going with reading. Thank you very much, Olivia.
Thank you. I'll mute myself now.
All right. So hi, I'm your next reader. My name is Valerie Mikles. I write science fiction. I'm agender, aromantic, and asexual, and I figured a lot of that out by writing. Today, I'll be reading from my new book, Nebula's Edge, which you can see the cover behind me. This is the book, which you can't see, but all these little orange tabs are all those happy to glad changes that you make once you get the proof, or the, wait, where did that quote mark go? It'll be available April 12th. There are advanced review copies available now, and it's up for pre-order. And you can get links to that in the RSM bookstore. And I don't know why I'm not the speaker. I don't see myself as the speaker. I see Olivia as the speaker, so I'm very confused. Hopefully the audience sees something differently. So when I started writing a story, I wanted to write a YA story that did not have an orphan super genius who saved the world despite incompetent adults. So I started with a kid living on a space station because I always wanted to be a kid living on a space station. I was really channeling my inner Jake Sisko for all you Star Trek fans. I'm picking up towards the end of chapter 1, and Kayla has just arrived on Unity Station. She was supposed to have a happy reunion with her mom, but her mom didn't show. So we pick up with Kayla, kind of sad about that. The door closed and Kayla tried not to cry. There wasn't enough counter space for her terrarium, so she set it on the floor, then sat next to it. The room had a tiny table with 2 chairs, not 3. The couch was also for 2. Her parents had a bedroom, and Kayla had a tiny alcove barely big enough for a bed. She'd been told having any privacy at all was a luxury, but she didn't care about the tiny room. She wanted a 3rd chair. Wiping the tears from her face, she pulled out her personal network utility tool, her Peanut, and debated telling her dad that her mom was a no-show. A little butterfly icon called to her. With a touch of a button, she brought her cybernetically enhanced moth to the top of the tank. Kayla wasn't going to sit here and mope. Her mom brought her out here to see aliens, and that was what she intended to do. Come on, Lucy, let's fly. Kayla had never really liked bugs until she started mixing them with electronics. What started as a school science fair project had become a passion for her. Her moth, Lucy, was by far the prettiest of her collection, and Kayla loved watching her fly down the hall. Something seemed to be interfering with Kayla's controller, though, because Lucy kept flying into the blue ceiling lights. Frustrated, she summoned her moth to her sleeve. She was used to wearing Lucy as a brooch and had more than one hole in her shirts to show for it. When they got to the cafeteria, Kayla's smile got so wide, her face hurt. There were mansurins everywhere. Their colors ranged from yellow-green to forest green. What shocked her the most was how much scales she saw. The mansurins wore ribbons wrapped around their torsos in different patterns that would barely meet the standards of human modesty. The security chief had worn a standard uniform with long pants and long sleeves, but these, when they weren't in uniform, they weren't in much of anything. Lucy, I might be overdressed, Kayla laughed, scanning the tables, trying to decide where to dive in. She figured introducing herself to a mixed group of humans and aliens would be easier, but there were none. She picked a table with 5 mansurins, some with spiny ridges crowning their heads, others without. She'd read that mansurins had at least 4 distinct physical sexes and a litany of gender identities. She wondered if they had quirky names for their gender identities. Did non-binary become non-quaternary? Hello, she said, smiling as adrenaline rushed through her veins. A husky mansurin with dark green scales turned to look at her. Their expression seemed neutral but curious. Then all 5 mansurins leaned in. Air passed their lips, but Kayla didn't hear a sound because they didn't speak at human frequencies. All their striking snake-like eyes were on her. I'm Kayla Powell, she, her. I'm new. I'm an intern with the Loft Academy, Kayla said. What are you eating? She saw 2 cups filled with dead beetles and realized she didn't want to know. Their stares made her uncomfortable. It was nice meeting you, she stammered, backing away. She bumped into another mansurin, one of the tall kind, over 7 feet tall. Did you have a question for them? I can translate, the new one asked, their English almost melodic in delivery. Their skin looked like brown opal with flecks of emerald, and they didn't have scales or ridges. No, I think I'll just get something to eat, Kayla murmured, rushing for the nearest human-looking vendor. Making friends with humans was never as easy as walking up and saying hi. There was no reason alien friendships would be simpler. She could feel the eyes of the mansurin still watching her as she rushed through the buffet line, threw together a salad, then fled up a flight of stairs. The cafeteria was split, and the stairs led to a loft overlooking the lower dining area. The loft was thankfully empty, and Kayla picked a seat where she could still watch, but at a distance. She felt safer at a distance. She picked a few leaves from her salad and offered them to Lucy, but Lucy had already gorged herself on shirt fibers. Then the brown mansurin came up the stairs and stopped right next to Kayla's table. This one wasn't like the others. For one, they had on proper clothes. Their gray jumpsuit had long sleeves but no patches. It wasn't a uniform. Why are you following me? Kayla asked, feeling defensive. You're making a sound I'm not familiar with. I did not realize humans could make sounds at that frequency, they said, cocking their head. Kayla realized they had human-like earlobes and fine brown hair shaved close to their head. You can hear Lucy? Kayla whispered, covering her moth protectively. The person noticed Lucy's reddish-brown wings peeking from under the edge of Kayla's palm and smiled a human-like smile. Oh, that makes sense. Thank you, they said, and turned to leave. Wait, Kayla called, sitting forward. You're different. You don't look like them, and you're not green, and your voice doesn't buzz when you talk at my frequency. Sonorans do not require cybernetic enhancement to speak at your frequency, the person answered. We are genetically engineered to speak to both humans and mansurins. Oh, you're Sonoran, Kayla said, laughing in disbelief. She'd been so overwhelmed by all the new experiences, she hadn't expected to meet a science experiment. I read about you. You have super hearing and super vocals, but aren't you supposed to be a little kid? We do not stay children forever, they said. I'm 9 years old. And 7 feet tall, Kayla blurted. The Sonoran crossed their arms and seemed embarrassed by the statement. Sorry, I'll stop nitpicking your appearance. I'm Kayla, she pronouns. Kayla had a mixed relationship with her gender. She waffled between demigirl and total apathy. Figuring out she was aromantic and asexual had been significantly easier. What's your name? Sulfra, also she whispered. Her confidence seemed to evaporate as Kayla's grew. Do you want to sit? Kayla offered. Sulfra took the chair as if she'd been ordered to. The chair seemed too tall and too small at the same time, but she used a button to adjust it. Kayla had so many questions about culture and anatomy. What was it like to be half human and half lizard? But Sulfra had seemed uncomfortable just talking about her height. This is Lucy, Kayla said, lifting her hand to show off the moth. Revealing she had a pet moth usually had one reaction from people. They called her weird and avoided her. But Sulfra had been drawn to Lucy's sound, so maybe things would be different. She's got a bit of cybernetic enhancement too. Check this out. Kayla used her peanut to activate Lucy's camera and fly her across the atrium. She slid open an extra panel on a device so she could project the video onto the table and make it easier to watch together. See anyone you know? Kayla asked, sending Lucy closer to the people, but not too close. If Sulfra could hear Lucy, then the other Manserins could too, and they might swat at her. That one is Teacher Jen, Sulfra said, pointing to a tall, slender Manserin. You will meet Zir in your classes. Zir, another pronoun to learn. What's Zir, what are they like? Kayla asked, shifting Lucy's course to follow the teacher. Z is correct, Sulfra supplied. I don't know how to answer that. Kayla would find out soon enough. One of my teachers is an alien, she thought excitedly. Teacher Jen seemed to be somber. A teacher and her friends seemed to be in intense conversation. Kayla felt bad for following the pair, but it wasn't like she was eavesdropping. Kayla didn't have a microphone on her bug. Yet. She'd only added the camera last week. They're going to the Manserin side. Do you live on that side? Kayla asked. Sonorins have their own space, Sulfra said, her inward lean telling Kayla that she was curious too. It's very loud on the Manserin side. To me, you wouldn't hear. Then why do they keep us out? Kayla asked, grinning mischievously. The two Manserins passed through the door and Kayla hurried Lucy in behind them. Immediately, the interference in her controls increased and there were black spots in the camera feed. Kayla sent Lucy to the ceiling, but by the extra jittering of the camera, she could tell Lucy was agitated. There were times Kayla wished she were a little more researcher in her and a little less experimentalist. This was definitely a mistake. And I'm gonna stop there. This is my first foray into YA. I also write other sci-fi thrillers, pictured behind me. And in the Alien Invasion book, there was a fan collaboration. All the artwork was contributed by my fans. And I will share a link. Okay, I gotta ask Valerie, what was the inspiration for having a pet moth and what advantages do moths have as pets? Okay, the answer to that is there was an article several years ago about people attaching electronics to beetles and essentially being able to fly the beetles around. And I felt very bad for the beetles because like they have their beetle lives to get back to, and why are we making them fly around? And that's when I learned, things about animal rights. But I thought it was a cool idea to have enhancements on moths. So this book actually has the moth and two katydids. That's the only part of her collection she could bring to the space station, and she'd left all the others behind. But I chose them because of their sensitivity to the frequencies that I wanted the aliens to be speaking at. And also they had just enough life expectancy to survive the length of the book because a lot of them don't live so long. But these are also futuristic, cybernetically enhanced creatures from another planet. So, yeah, it was, it started as a science project for her. All right, so I'm gonna pass to Kristin now, and then I'll be back later.
Good morning. Hopefully that's working. I think I still see Valerie as the speaker, but judging from last time, it'll take a sec. So good morning, I'm Kristin, or KL Noone, that's how I publish. I tend to write a lot of paranormal romance, some sci-fi, some fantasy, sometimes contemporary, sometimes more historical. Here's a couple of my shiny covers. This was actually my very first novel, which is a gorgeous cover. Sometimes I write academic things. Here's the academic book on Terry Pratchett that just came out. And today, this is actually something from last month's release, which is more contemporary kind of paranormal romance, urban fantasy. It's my Cupid, but not really a Cupid, Valentine's novella out from JMS Books. It's called Frost and Rain. And it's the Valentine's Day, but not really, because he doesn't really enjoy being a Cupid story. And in this particular section, it's a world in which there are personifications of various holidays or natural phenomena, like the morning or springtime or night or love in various ways. There are also asexual cupids. You can have love for other types of things. But this particular story is MM with gay and pansexual main characters. And Don owns a coffee shop. He's a frost spirit, but he's an unconventional one. He likes to be warm and he likes making people happy. And so he uses the art to decorate the coffee shop windows and things like that. And Rain is a Cupid who works as a divorce lawyer. And initially they don't get along very well, but they like to irritate each other. May came in with riotous explosions of color, flowers in the newly landscaped area in front of the building, wide arching blue skies, clean, clear golden sun like the gleam of a newly opened treasure chest. The coffee shop hummed along happily, and Don experimented with flavors, with lavender, honey, rosewater, springtime violets, and he drew flowers and curling vines and frost art in the windows. The Sunrise children, they all had different names, different traditions, but they laughed and chattered and glowed with the brilliance of the new dawns, popped in and drank coffee and herbal tea. They laughed and left warmth and fluttering springtime rainbow streamers in their wake. One of them, a shameless and adorable young man with bright emerald eyes, always winked at him when leaving and tipped him well. Rain, around a caffeine fusion, a break from whatever his tangled law office work of the day might be, commented, "You'd end up exhausted. Wouldn't be worth it." "I wasn't even looking, and how do you know anyway?" Don collected abandoned coffee cups. The Sunrise children always tended toward forgetful but forgivable chaos, and wiped down the counter. "As if you even like people, Cupid." "I don't like most people," Rain said. "They're reckless and clumsy and made of desires. They're walking complications, and that includes humans and us personifications. And you don't want to go there. The perky good morning but all day long sunrise sexual stamina always sounds nice, but at some point you'd need to eat and sleep. And also he's got no fashion sense. Those sandals, honestly." "You can't comment," John said. "You live in suits. You don't own anything that's not a suit." Rain looked down at himself. Today's suit was dark blue, with a lighter blue shirt and small silver knotwork cufflinks, so discreet they'd probably cost a minor fortune. I dress like an adult, with an actual job. "Why a divorce lawyer again? You're a Cupid." "I don't know," Rain said. "Why are you a barista?" Rain knew he owned the place. This was therefore deliberate. Don let it go. He propped elbows on the counter instead. "I take it back. You're not a lawyer. You're a cactus." "I'm a what?" Rain said, setting down his coffee cup. Don decided this was a success. "In what universe," Rain added, "am I a succulent?" "Prickly, pointy, but softer inside. Full of advice, like water." He was starting to have the feeling this wasn't helping. "Good for rescuing people? When they're about to make bad decisions? Or getting lost? or needing water? I don't think, Rain said, you're very good at either complimenting people or insulting them. I can't tell which that was supposed to be. But his eyes were less spiky, more curious, more complicated, and Dawn had always liked complications. Never mind, he said. I didn't say anything. And he slid a mug across the bar. Try this. Rain regarded the coffee with misgiving. I don't like sweet flavors. I know. And I don't like gifts. It's not a gift. Then, I'm experimenting. You're helping me. Just try it. Rain glared at him but took a sip, then looked surprised and took another sip. Chipotle spice? Right, and dark cocoa. I'm thinking about summer, bright flavors. It's still only May. Your windows are full of spring flowers, which, by the way, are melting. That happens, Dawn said. Ice magic, warm weather. What do you think? It doesn't bother you? Rain paused for another sip. Then he licked his lips, a swipe of tongue that Dawn thoroughly failed not to watch. That it doesn't last, I mean, the magic. No, Dawn said. It's there for as long as it's there. But it doesn't stay. Yeah, but I'm not out to conquer the art world. It's just the family talent, what I was born with, and it makes people smile when they see it. And that's what you want, Rain said. You make people smile. He looked slightly tired, Dawn thought, though there wasn't a specific reason for that thought. Something around his eyes, some sort of resignation or weight. Nothing too visible. Rain was too self-aware and too put together and too competent for that. But something. He added, looking at his lawyer, I do like people being happy. I even like cacti. You really are the strangest frost spirit I've ever met, Rain said. Succulents, coffee, flowers, whatever happened to winter and ice? I can make ice anytime. Dawn put fingertips on the counter. Cold rose, formed spikes, gleamed, faded. But what do you think of the spice and the coffee? Oh, people will love it, Rain said. They always do, whatever you come up with. I'm sure that ray of morning sunshine with the unsubtle winking at you will love it too. I have to get back to work. He's too young for me, Dawn said. And he has no fashion sense. Those sandals. You're not that old, Rain said. I'm taking this with me. This meant the coffee. It was not in one of the disposable to-go mugs. Just bring it back, Dawn said, and the door opened as the early lunch crowd came in. Rain gave him a mildly offended scowl at the suggestion and left, taking the mug with him. The coffee mug reappeared just before Dawn was due to leave. He came out from behind the bar, moved toward the door, and found his mug, spotlessly clean, sitting on a table. A bar of chocolate also sat on the table, a ludicrously expensive and velvety honeycomb-laced brand, one that came from a specific luxurious shop and arrived nestled in opulent black and white wrapping. Dawn had always liked sweet. Dawn liked honey and chocolate and decadence. He'd only ever spent the money on that particular indulgence from that particular expensive shop once or twice ever. He picked up the chocolate and his mug. He looked out at the night, but saw no one. His fingers, which were so often cold, felt surprisingly warm. Rain said nothing at all about coffee or chocolate or presents the next morning. Uncommon Grounds was busy, a convention in town, and hordes of costumed visitors descending for sustenance. Rain caught Dawn's eye across the counter, but only took the usual cup and nodded and headed towards the door. He did pause, though, looking at the windows. The windows shimmered. No longer flowers, but a whole garden of cacti and succulents, etched in ice and frost and spiky silvery lines, caught the early morning light. He smiled and went out. And for time, we'll stop there because we're getting our 10-minute warning.
All right, cool. Let's all come back. And is there a question for you in the Q&A? There's a question for you in the Q&A.
There is. And that's, oh, I love how you play against type, and I bet he makes awesome frappuccinos. Oh, he does. And that comes up as the weather gets warmer. Having ice magic is fantastic for making chilled and iced coffee drinks. And are there downsides to being a frost spirit in a coffee shop? A little bit. Sometimes you can inadvertently make something cold that was supposed to be hot, especially if you're having a lot of emotions and lose control of magic. And also, his family doesn't quite approve because he's doing something that's so far outside of the traditional kind of frost spirit, either artwork and glittery, shiny things or weather. His brother actually works on secret government projects that have to do with weatherproofing and scientific research and things like that.
Aww.
So Don's problem is that he's not really using his power for anything other than making people happy and making really tasty iced lattes. But it does make him happy, and that's important, and it makes people smile.
And your story definitely was making me smile when I was listening. We're having a snowstorm right now, and I'm thinking, I need to get this and curl up with it. This sounds adorable.
It's early morning here, so I figured we could use coffee.
Yes, definitely. Well, and it's funny how little things like that can make such a difference in the way we describe cultures. Because in my work, the Roya blight went through a lot of the coffee crops. So what they have for coffee is a synthetic that doesn't taste great. And when you can get real coffee, that's a great way to show how much you care about somebody, is that you got them real coffee.
It's coffee of love.
When I was writing my first book, because it was like sci-fi, future, another planet, my editor was like, why are they still drinking coffee? What are the like why is there still this obsession with coffee? And it's like, because humans are like creatures of habit. So, then I created, okay, well, this world has something called Buna, and this world has something called coffee. And then Nate's like, well, we don't want your gravity beans because the gravity was higher on the world where that version of coffee grew. And so I was like, okay, I can create other caffeinated beverages and everybody can have their preferences. But
Yes.
but yeah, gravity beans was my favorite slang term for it.
That's awesome. I love that. But yeah, you did a great job with atmosphere, Kristin. And do you prefer to go to by Kristin or KL? I should have asked.
Oh, Kristin's fine. I'm so used to having multiple names in different spaces. It's like academic spaces and fandom spaces, and I publish as KL Noone. Kristin's fine.
Oh boy, I hear you. It's really funny because on a fairly regular basis, the O.E. Tierman work will get a review that addresses the team as he. And I always take it as a huge compliment. It's like, I write male characters well enough that they think I'm a guy. Yes! I win.
I always love things that are stories that take care over the setting, objects, sensory detail. What do things not just look like, but smell like, or kind of feel like? The sensation of sun on your skin, or the table, or how cold it is. Those things always are both just delightful, but also make everything feel so real.
Yes, I hear that.
I was writing this story once, and the little girl had a peanut butter sandwich, and then it just became this running theme through the whole thing about how peanut butter was a luxury, and like, where do you get your peanut butter? But yeah, like just little things like that, little human elements that lots of people can relate to. It gives you something to hold on to, and then it also just pulls you into the environment.
Yes. And I love playing with that myself. For example, so we just got our 5-minute warning, but for example, there's a big tradition in the unit that I write of finding a way, no matter how tight resources are, to make people cakes for their birthdays. And so they'll do this crazy trading with other bases and other non-corporate entities all around, trying to get sugar and whatever they can get, and then find a recipe that will make a tasty cake out of whatever they were able to scratch together. And so it's really fun. Everybody's really close to the commander, Aiden. And so they actually found fresh strawberries for his cake for his birthday. And he's staring at this cake going, how did you guys pull this one off? And of course his team is just like, we're the best.
There was a year when I wasn't having dairy and I wasn't doing a lot of sugar, and so cake for my birthday was not really something that I wanted. And my sisters got a clementine, put a candle in the middle of the clementine.
Aww,
It's just so like, this is the best picture ever.
but yeah.
Right. So we have 4 minutes left. Does anybody want to say what you're working on now and where people can find you as we close out?
Sure, if it's okay with you folks, I started, so I'll just start and move on from there. So right now I'm working on book 6 in the series, the Aces High Jokers Wild series. Under my own name, Olivia Wylie, I write nonfiction ethnobotany, and you can find all of that either under the name Olivia Wylie, W-Y-L-I-E, on Amazon, or you can go to Etsy. Leafing Out is my Etsy store, and I have all my books as well as art revolving around plant themes up on there. But right now for Queer Spec Fic, it's Aces High Jokers Wild book 6, and it's time to really get things rolling.
All right, for me, I'm currently working on Nebula's Edge comes out next month, April 12th. And so all the ramp up stuff for that. And then I have far too many works in progress, but I kind of got sucked into one called Ship Whisperer, which is a military sci-fi featuring a non-binary soldier who can talk to spaceships. And that's
Oh, cool.
That's what I'm working on this weekend.
Nice.
Oh, that sounds so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, what am I working on? I feel like I'm always working on so many things. Let's see. Next week, actually, there's a little bonus free short story coming out for the Demon for Midwinter universe, which is actually my second novel, and there's a bunch of other spin-off stories, but the last little bonus story will be out next week on the 20th for free. And after that, we're doing a big box set of all the connected stories and novellas. What else am I working on? The current work in progress is actually a more high fantasy novel about a magician and sort of about redemption. And he did one terrible thing a long time ago and has been kind of trying to take himself out of the world and go hide on an island. And then a very nice young man shows up who wants to go on a quest and wants the help of the world's most legendary magician, and you can guess where that goes after some grumpiness on both sides. So I'm working on that. I'm about 30,000 words into it, and it's a ton of fun so far. So hopefully that will be later this year. And there's the secret mystery Regency era magicians that I'm working on with K.S. Murphy, who some of you might know, who I don't think is here right now, but who was here last year for last RSM. So we're collaborating, which is really fun and exciting. And then on the academic front, I'm working on an academic book about Star Trek tie-in novels and the Star Trek tie-in fiction. So that's the academic project that I'm behind on, but the hopefully of interest maybe for any of you who are science fiction nerds or are interested in Star Trek novels and associated other things.
Yay!
Yeah, you might find some of those nerds here.
All
right, so we will be in the Discord. There's a reading thing, but for now, that's it for us, and our panel is done. And we'll hand it back to the tech mods so the next panel can get set up. But thank you everybody for coming, and thank you readers. This was awesome.
Thanks for listening. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for
Go get your
joining us.
coffee.